WhyGuru, 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 WhyGuru,
वाहिगुरु वाहिगुरु साहिब जियो सगल द्वार को छाड़ के गहो तुहारो द्वार बाहें गहे की लाज अस गोबिंद दास तुहार गोबिंद दास तुहार वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह. Okay guys, just as I said, it's a bit of a health warning. Today's quite heavy going. It's going to be a lot of facts as well and a lot of time covered. We're talking from 1925 through till 84, both June and November. Okay. So last week, quick recap. Last week we covered the fall of Ranjit Singh's kingdom. Okay, rise and fall, and then we covered Sikhs. People were offended under the British, but that's effectively what we were. British were in control. The Sikhs were in the British Raj, yeah. And then the Singh Sabha movement, which, just to reiterate, was a Prachar movement. Yeah? It wasn't a revolutionary movement. It was more Prachar orientated. The Gurdwara Reform movement, which was a reform movement, but it was non-violent. Okay. Some of the first non-violent protests in India were by the Sikh Gurdwara Reform movement. Okay. That's where you get the quotes of 100 Christ being martyred every day. Yeah, by Gardner, which was a guy from the UK that went over there. And then the SGPC gets set up in the 1920s. Akali Dal, the political part of the Sikhs, the political party of the Sikhs, gets set up. And then Rahat Marada is set up as well, which come later, but the precursor to that, the idea behind it gets set up then. And then this is all in the backdrop of the Indian independence movement, which is going to be relevant today because we're going to talk about that more. Okay, where you've got the Gaddar party from America getting involved. Yeah. So remember, 1925, First World War has taken place, and already the movement has started for independence, which keeps building up for the next 20 years up till 47. So you've got the Gaddar movement. This is mostly by US and Canadian Punjabi Sikhs, okay, and Hindus, but mostly people that are, the Sikh community is very highly involved in this, and it is sometimes violent. They don't mind using violence against the British violence, yeah. And then you've also got Gandhi and his Free India movement, okay, and they're more non-violent. We kind of covered that last week, but we're going to go into that in more detail today. Okay, this week. So again, the first part we're going to look at is from 1925 to 47, independence, yeah, that movement to get independence from the British, and then from 47 to 73 for the Sikhs, yeah, obviously not the whole Indian politics, but for the Sikhs, what you've got is a Punjabi Suba movement, okay. Suba just means an area, a Punjabi speaking state. That's what this is about. And then part C is going to be then from 78 or 73, you could say 78 to 84, the background to what happens in June and November 1984. Okay, a lot of this background is sometimes lost. We just know what happens in June and November. We don't know how it built up. Okay, and then we're going to cover June and November 1984. Okay, so Part A, independence from the British. How do the Sikhs feature in the British independence movement? Some of this stuff nowadays isn't covered that much. In India it is, but because we live in England, we're always talking about the great history of the Sikhs or the British, yeah, and how we were loyal, right? But some of this stuff is kind of opposite to that, because we weren't loyal citizens, we were actually loyal Indians trying to fight for independence from Britain. Okay. T obviously disappeared there, but the main players. This is not chronological, in case you were thinking I'm going to do it chronological. I can't, because there's different parties, different players involved. So it's going to be more about laying out to you who was involved in the movement, who were the main people, and how do we relate to that. Okay. So Congress is a political party. Okay. It's mostly led by people like Nehru. Okay, Gandhi's part of it. Now, Nehru, his background is he's a career politician. If you know what that means, he's never done anything else but be in politics. Okay, much like today's politicians nowadays, they don't inspire much hope. Paddy Ashram was a good guy. He always, he had done something. Most politicians nowadays go from university straight into politics. Yeah, he didn't really inspire unity. Okay, nowadays he's been painted as this great politician, statesman, loved by, but that's kind of like the history, in post independence, making it more beautiful than it was. He is the father of Indira Gandhi. So I want to make this clear, okay? Indira Gandhi did not have the surname Gandhi, okay? She is married to a guy called Firoz Khan, who is a Muslim. She got married as per the Muslim wedding thing. She then changes her name to, her husband is Parsi, as in he's come from, he's Farsi, yeah? So she ends up taking the middle name of the mother, his mother, which is Gandhi. And they changed Gandhi into Gandhi because there's this other really famous guy called Gandhi that everybody really loves. And she ends up looking like his granddaughter, okay? And she actually paints herself in that way. She's got pictures of herself placed all over India, okay, with Nehru and Gandhi and her looking like the next in line, okay? A lot of Indians don't know this. Most of us, a lot of us don't know as well, okay? So Gandhi, his main thing is non-violent resistance, okay? He believes in this idea that you can have the moral upper ground by being non-violent, okay? And one of the things he does is he keeps talking about self-reliance. And that means self-reliance, for example, in India growing its own cotton. Previously India was sending its untreated cotton to England. It was getting treated in Lancashire in the cotton mills there, and then being sent back to India. And they start this whole movement of making your own kapde, yeah? Spinning your own cloth. So the whole spinning wheel being on the Indian flag was because of that, because let's do our own things. Even the salt marches, salt was being sent from here, was being bought from the British, but it was being mined from here. It's like we can make our own salt. Thank you very much. We've got the ocean next to us. So he was about, a lot of his things about self-reliance, but he was also, he wasn't this father and beloved person in India all the time. He was a little bit strange though. He had this concept of satyagraha. Satyagraha means like true, taking on the truth, yeah? He's written a book called Experiments with Truth as well. And it was a little bit weird. There's all this kind of purity, not indulging in sex, testing oneself for the better good of the nation. He was kind of becoming quasi-religious. And a lot of people just wanted him to get on with being the political leader and not go off into this kind of, giving people moral lessons in how they should behave, yeah? If you don't know much about his weird sexual ideas, you can Google it. It's pretty weird. He used to test himself on his chastity by sleeping naked with other women who were naked but that were not his wife, and then he would test himself in that way. It's very true. His grandniece, who was about 16 at the time, was convinced into sleeping in his bed. She was naked, he was naked, but it was about him testing his control. So he was, and he would do this publicly, like it wasn't like a hidden secret, it was publicly, he was saying, and so he was at that time seen as a little bit weird, yeah? And many people later on, they accepted the fact that once he was killed, he became the icon and they kind of didn't speak against it. But the truth about Gandhi, many articles are out there, just Google it, just type in truth about Gandhi, you'll find stuff about him. He wanted a united India, okay? Although obviously he wanted no violence. Now one of the things he would do is, because there was always arguments between different groups, and because he was kind of like a well-known leader, he would often threaten fasts if there was communal violence. So if there was Hindu versus Muslim rioting, then he would go on fast, hunger strike until people stopped, okay? And also, if anybody uses violent means to get independence, he was very much against that as well. There was the third group, the revolutionaries. I call them revolutionaries because they were actually interested in revolution and not really dealing with the British in a non-violent way. The Ghadar movement is part of that. They're mostly expats, Punjabis. And then these guys, the famous people like Kartar Singh Sarabha, they're part of this. We're going to talk about them. They're basically abroad in America, and they start looking back at India. They get used to the way of living in abroad. They see the independence and they see the lies that the British public are feeding the Indians, that we're doing this for your own good and stuff. And they decide, we need to do something different. And they start setting up press and making publishing articles and basically galvanizing Western opinion and Indians, abroad and in India, to do something. Okay, they got more freedom than they would have in India, because in India they would just close the presses down. The British weren't like allowing free press in India, by the way. Yeah? So these guys were revolutionary, and the Indian National Army was another group. Just out of interest, how many people have heard of the Indian National Army? Okay, it's about 6, 7 people, 5, 6 people in the room. So what these guys were Indian soldiers who were basically prisoners of war of the Japanese. So because India was part of the Second World War, they were actually involved in fighting against the Japanese. Japanese captured these guys, a lot of them, and they said to them, you know what, you can stay in our prisoner of war camps, right? And they didn't treat them that nicely. Or, if you like, we can arm you, and you can go and fight the Indians, the British in India, to get independence, right? And if you got, because the Japanese were thinking like, our enemy's enemy is our friend. So India's fighting the Japanese. Britain is relying upon revenues from India to keep this war effort going. So they can disrupt British Raj in India, right, and cause another war there. Then that would help them. See, quite clever. So what they did is Japanese basically helped, and Subhash Chandra Bose, he became the leader of it. Now he wasn't initially the leader. Initial leader was a guy called actually I think I'm giving too much away. I'm going to go into this later on. But initial leader was not him, but he was given it. These guys often saw Gandhi and those guys and the non-violent people as very weak, not prepared to do anything really revolutionary. Many ways that nowadays some of the youth might look at the people in the Sikh council and stuff and say, oh, they're really weak, they're not doing anything. Yeah. So it was a similar sort of thing going on there as well. And they saw World War II as an ideal time to actually do something, because the British were very involved in other things. Yeah. They didn't really care much about India at that time. They were involved in a war in Europe, a war in Japan, a war in Africa. Right. Ideal time to kind of strike at your enemy when he's distracted, much like the Khalsa did. When Ahmad Shah Ali was attacking, yeah, they saw that as a time. So, carrying on, other groups, they've also got the Hindu nationalists. This is a sort of a nationalist movement in India of Hindus, and it's very communalistic. It's anti-Sikh and anti-Islam, effectively. Yeah, these guys don't want to live in peace with the Hindu Muslims. They want them to be subjected to Hindu rule. Yeah, Mera Bharat Mahan, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, obviously you've heard Gandhi was killed by a Hindu nationalist. Okay, so these guys weren't really fond of Gandhi because he seemed to be appealing and appeasing, they said, the Muslims quite a lot. Okay, RSS is basically the kind of modern grandchild of this movement. Okay, it was around that back then as well. Arya Samaj it was called. The Muslim League is also there. This set up in 1906 by Muhammad Ali Jinnah. These guys really feared a Hinduized India. Okay, obviously population-wise, Hindus make up the majority of both India and Pakistan if you put them together, right? So these guys feared that, and they decided to set up this Muslim League to get more. In politics, when you got fit numbers, you count, right? They tried to work with the Hindus in 1930s. Yeah, these guys initially weren't all about Pakistan, but they effectively gave up. Now, one of the problems is that the British, okay, and Gandhi and people were trying to keep India together, right, when they separated. However, whenever there was communal rioting, okay, initially it was bad, everybody hated it. The problem is that as there was more communal rioting, it kind of seemed to give the idea that India can't exist together. Might as well give them separate lands. So effectively it ended up being that there was a false incentive. The more rioting there is, the more likelihood there is for Pakistan to be given, or the Muslims to be given their own country, and maybe India to be split into multiple countries. If you can't live together in peace, then split them up. Yeah. So this became an incentive of separateness. And then there were the Sikh leaders. Master Tara Singh is a famous person, often very, very maligned, spoken out against, but he was from a Hindu background, became a Sikh like many people did in those days. The eldest son was often made into a Singh. He was actually invited to London at that time, during those times, to debate having a Sikh country. Okay, and effectively what happens is he ends up choosing, yeah, to be part of India. Okay, and much of this is because of promises made to the Hindus. Now imagine a map of India back in those days, yeah, right? And you can imagine how big Punjab was, right? We're going to get to that later on. But the lines of Punjab would have come to the edge of what is now Haryana, and that would have been, right, right next to Delhi. So you can imagine having your capital, one of your major cities, on the border. Nobody wants that, right? Nobody wants their capital city on the border because it's not protected. There's no buffer zone. Yeah, and this is a scenario that was facing the Indian people. That if there was a Sikh country and it was Punjab, then this is what would happen. We're going to go into a bit more about the thinking of the Sikhs at that time. Yeah, and then there was also the British in their policies. Lord Mountbatten, he was a Viscount in India. He presided over the whole, the ending of the British Raj. He's an interesting character. Didn't really care much about the Sikhs. Okay, he was quite, well educated. Him and Nehru were quite pally. They were, educated abroad. Funny story about him. The truth is that his wife ended up having an affair with Nehru as well. Yeah, so there's all kinds of weird stuff going on at that time. But Nehru was kind of like the, very. He's not like a guy of the people. Yeah, he was very educated, very cosmopolitan, living abroad, stuff like this. And yeah, as you can see, quite liberal with his ethic, with the morals as well. Okay, fighting against the Gadars then. What did they do? Famous Gadar. These are called Gadri Babe. The nickname for them. These are the guys that died for Indian independence much before Gandhi even decided to come along. He was there on the scene, but these guys were the heroes at that time, and they still are. I mean, there's movies made about Bhagat Singh now. At that time, many people maligned him. Those of the Gandhi ilk that were trying to stay non-violent, they weren't really supporting these guys. Bhagat Singh, he's aged 23 when he's hanged in 1931. Basically, the story behind him, why he was so famous, is that he's a great writer, wrote loads of articles, and then basically they decided that there was this policeman called John Saunders, and you might say he was like a local tyrant because in India the army was there, British army, but also the police was there, and often the junior policemen were like Indians, but the senior policemen were like these guys, and they were involved in repressing society. Repressing any kind of revolution, keeping people under control. Like Punjab police in India, in Punjab now, are the ones that killed our movement. In the same way, the Indian police, British police at that time, was very much in charge of kind of keeping law and order. And he was well hated, and they decided, right, the best thing to do about him is to kill him. Okay, so they assassinated this guy, John Saunders, right? He was part of a team. And as you can watch many movies about him, there was 3 of them that were quite famous. But what's funny about him is that basically, when they were being interviewed in court, all the newspapers were allowed to report what was said in court. So of course they kept getting asked, how did you do it? And they decided to give the entire bomb-making manual. And every day, like the bomb-making manual, how they meant about getting the equipment, what they need to do to make it, they were speaking out in court every day, and it was getting published. So they were kind of even in their last dying throes of about to get killed, they were like giving away all the information they could to get revolution to grow. These guys were like hardcore revolutionaries. Bhagat Singh, very inspiring person. Kartar Singh Sraba, he's only 20 years old when he's hung, and that's obviously he's earlier, but he's less famous than Bhagat Singh. 1915. He's a guy who's in the US, gives up a career and a life abroad to come back to India and takes part in publishing revolutionary material abroad. So these guys, by the time they're like 18, 19, they're already like accomplished pressmen. So back then people did become more mature, younger. And when he came back to India, they would raise funds by robberies from the state. Okay, they didn't have any qualms about that. They would enrich themselves, and then they would use that for their funds they needed for explosives or material. He was actually sold out by a British spy within their team. Sorry about the spellings. Also, Udham Singh. Udham Singh is very famous. Sorry, his picture's not up there. In 1940, he came out to the UK. And here in the UK, he killed Michael O'Dwyer. As you pointed out last week, he was not General Dyer. General Dyer's guy in command was Michael O'Dwyer. But this was because of the Amritsar massacre of 1919. Most people have heard of Jallianwala Bagh. Okay, the British, Cameron even acknowledged it when he went across to India. A lot of people were killed. They were trapped into this little area, only one road out. They blocked it and they machine gunned loads of people. Obviously, a majority of the Sikhs, but Udham Singh was a young child at that time. And then, obviously, 21 years later, he vows to take revenge. Comes across here. when he kills O'Dwyer, he's carrying a Bible, and carved out within the Bible, he's got the space for the gun. So he walks in and takes it out and it's in open court. It's not like he's hiding it from far away. Snipers him. He walks up to him and then shoots him. He tries to shoot some other people there as well, but only O'Dwyer is killed. What's interesting is that the British press covered him quite favourably, considering that he just killed one of their guys, because there was a lot of sentiment about what happened in 1919 wasn't good. Yeah, so it was kind of like, well, a bad thing happened, but actually this is kind of like karma, you know, because these guys have held that for so many years. So he was seen as quite like a brave man who came after all the years to take revenge on a horrible incident. Udham Singh has been called, well, you know, he was lauded, almost lauded here, but back in India, you know, Gandhi and Nehru, you know, were already criticising him. Yeah. So just to remember that, you know, he's a freedom fighter hero now. But that time, you see, in many ways, like we talked last week, whenever the Sikhs did, or anybody did anything that took the limelight away from Gandhi and Nehru, yeah, they didn't like it. Okay, they were keen to be the only representatives, the only leaders of India. Yeah, and people who weren't towing their line, so there was a tussle for power, you might say. Yeah, as there always is, because obviously a country might be up for grabs soon, and someone wants to run it. Yeah, so this was the situation. They condemned him. Subhash Chandra Bose, who was the guy in the Indian National Army, okay, he never condemns this, because obviously they're part of taking military action as well. And they actually were an army. They were fighting against soldiers from the Indian Army, yeah, and obviously the British soldiers. But there was actually at a point Indian soldiers fighting against International Army soldiers. Okay, I'll talk about that a bit more about what happened with those guys. A point on Udham Singh. Most people, what would you think? What was his name? What would you say was his name? What did he to call himself? Huh?
It was Muhammad something, wasn't it?
Muhammad Singh, Ram Muhammad Singh Azad.
Yeah, most people remember it as Ram Muhammad Singh Azad. That's what the movie says. But I was just reading yesterday, Maple Sikh is a guy from Canada who publishes a blog, saying that all the documents that shows his name is always Muhammad Singh Azad. So the Ram was basically put on. Yeah, it was kind of put on all of his documents, wherever he signed his, you know, even his name in the police when he got arrested here. And what was your name? He never said Udham Singh. He said Muhammad Singh Azad. But obviously, you know, in order to kind of make him, you know, Hinduize him, so they put Ram Muhammad Singh Azad. So just a point to note there, where a lot of our history, a lot of the names, all these things, we don't realize how subtle some of this stuff is, how clever some of this stuff is, you know, trying to get us to even, you know, like Bhagat Singh, whenever he's shown with this turban, but mostly he's shown when he was like a munna or a guy who was an atheist. Mostly, you know, he was quite a committed atheist, to be honest. But the thing is that, you know, if we know from our history, Bhai Sahib Ranveer Singh actually met him in prison. Yeah, if you don't know Bhai Sahib Ranveer Singh, he was like a sant, yeah, of the 19th century. He was a freedom fighter as well. I think he might be in. He was covered last week anyway. He was, you know, against the British. He got sent down, went to prison into the, you know, the Andaman Nicobar Islands. So outside India, it's like the penal colony of India. And Bhai Sahib met him, Shaheed Udham Singh, and they had a conversation about religion. And actually, he was convinced. You know, I trust Bhai Sahib Ranveer Singh, because in his own words, he says that he actually accepted that actually Sikhi is the way. Yeah, but before he died, you know? So he accepted it. But obviously, he's painted now as a secular hero.
I thought it was Bhagat Singh that he met in prison.
Yeah, Bhagat Singh, yeah, not Udham Singh.
Yeah.
Udham Singh was obviously in the UK. So did I get it wrong? So he met Bhagat Singh, not Udham Singh. I'm just saying.
That
Alright.
conversation is actually documented in Bhai Sahib's autobiography.
Yeah, exactly. So he writes it down himself. That's why I say I trust his words more than the Indian press. You know, he had no sort of. He was such a Bhagat, he's going to speak the truth regardless. So you can read his book. It's called Jail Chittiyan. It's actually Chittiyan he's written while he was in jail.
You can actually download it on iBooks and.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good read. Chardi Kala book. Yeah. 2 years later, after this, yeah, now Udham Singh, what he did in India, he became very popular because of what he done. Now you imagine, like, you know, how popular is Bhai Balwant Singh Rajwana. So how popular is Bhai Balwant Singh Rajwana to us now? Yeah, because of what he did in it, right? And back then he was one of the only people who done anything like this. Like they'd gone to the heart of England, London, and killed a guy right there in open court, and then taken the punishment, you know, happily saying, my name is Muhammad Singh Azad, yeah, a national hero. So effectively, he was like a massive hero in India. You know, loads of people like Shaheed Udham Singh is like famous even now. But 2 years after this is when Gandhi launches the Quit India movement, because he sees the momentum behind him. These people, they're not really as much leading. They're kind of taking the trends, you know, like watching the trends of what's going on out there, seeing where they can position themselves best to kind of make. I mean, I'm not saying Gandhi was like not trying to do something for the country, but he was very much a trend watcher as well. Yeah, fighting against the British, talking about these guys. The guy, the Singh at the top, yeah, that's Sardar Mohan Singh, yeah, or Captain Mohan Singh. He was the first head of the Indian National Army. Okay, when the Japanese first set it up, he was picked as a leader. He was actually a prisoner of war of the Japanese at the time, and he was formed in 1942. He's an ex-POW. Now in 43 they put Subhash Chandra Bose in charge because the Indians in India wouldn't accept a Singh in charge. Majority of the soldiers in the Indian National Army were covered. It's 60% I think were Sikhs, right? But so just let me bring it back all the way there. Basically, the Indians didn't want a Sikh in charge of the National Army. They wanted a kind of typically Hindu-looking person at the front, so that they could all rally behind him. Yeah, and Subhash Chandra Bose was actually, I mean, he was a freedom fighter, but he was at that time in Germany. He was in negotiations with Hitler, trying to do something with Hitler to work against the British Army. People were trying all sorts of things to get rid of the British at that time. So he was in Germany, yeah, trying to form a little regiment of Indian nationalist soldiers who would then fight against the British in India. Because obviously Hitler was the same thing, my enemy's enemy is my friend, yeah. But what happens is that he's then, obviously Germany and Japan are also talking, by the way, yeah, because they were part of the same movement, because they were fighting against the rest of the Allies. So now he's then brought over to Japan, right, and then over to Burma and in the Philippines, and he's then put in charge of the Indian National Army there. Okay, so you can see like it's quite murky, isn't it, politics, and you uncover some of the curtain and see what happened back then. Now he fights against the British on Japanese side. Post World War II, okay, he's actually tried for treason by the British. Okay, so because 45 is over, World War II over, 45 to 47, you still got the British government in charge of India. So they try him for treason. Yeah. Now what's interesting is that Nehru is part of he's a lawyer, by the way, Nehru, yeah? If you didn't know. By training he's a lawyer. So he's part of the defense of the Indian National Army. Okay, he's defending them against the British charge of treason. And what he says is this argument, which is really interesting because it comes back to what happened to us. Okay, his argument is you can't try him for treason because treason means rebelling against your legitimate government. He goes, well, they're not. They had their own legitimate government. They were the legitimate soldiers of Free India. Although Free India didn't exist as a concept, they said that this is the concept, yeah, like you might say a Khalistan, right? And these are, so I'm trying to make it, so imagine there was a Khalistan concept and there were soldiers working for Khalistan that didn't recognize the legitimacy of the Indian government in the same way these soldiers didn't recognize the legitimacy of the British government in India, and therefore they were freedom fighters of India, of Free India, and not people who were committing treason against the British. This is Nehru's argument at the time, yeah? Then check out what his daughter does later on. Okay, Sikh contributions, interesting, because there's contributions on all sides, yeah? This is Maharaja Bhupinder Singh at the top, visiting the World War I trenches, yeah? First World War. The British, obviously, in World War I, World War II, Sikhs played a massive part of as soldiers. Now you might say, well, they're supporting the British then. But that's not always true, because part of the deal that the British politicians agreed with India was that they would give them independence at some point, especially if they support the British in World War II. Okay? So part of the effort to get soldiers into World War II in the British Army was that in exchange we would get independence from the British. Okay, so this was like a patriotic thing as well by many Sikhs, yeah? They were looking to the future, free India from the British. But look at the Indian independence movement now against the British. At the same time, 77% of those hanged were Sikh. Sikhs are like 2% of the population of India. Look at that overwhelming percentage, 77%, and 81% of those sentenced to life imprisonment. And obviously, Bhai Singh was one of those, yeah, who were Sikh. And then during the Quit India movement, which Gandhi launched in 42, okay, many arrests were made of anybody that was involved in sedition or trying to get Britain out of India before the war was over. They wanted to wait until the war was over. These guys wanted to get it done quick, because the war was, as always, when wars start, what do they say? It'll be over by Christmas. Yeah. First World War was the same. Second World War was going to be a quick war. Turned out to be 5 years long. Okay. No one's expecting that. People were fed up after 42. They're like, let's get them out now. I can't be bothered with this. Yeah. Now again, Sikhs contributed 70% of all the Punjabis that were arrested. Yeah. Now Sikhs within Punjab were a minority. I think 10% of all the population of Punjab was Sikh. So again, this is to bear in mind how much the Sikhs were involved in all types of revolution. Yeah. And then the Indian National Army, again, 60% of the 20,000, this is a big army, yeah? 60% is Sikhs, okay? But they wouldn't let a Sikh guy run it, yeah? Mohan Singh was removed and Subhash Chandra Bose was put in charge, okay? Okay, independence from the British. Promises to the Sikhs. Sorry about this. Okay. Promises, why are these? Because this is when the Sikhs, why do the Sikhs choose to be part of India and not have their own country? This is part of the background of that. So this is an article in somebody quoting an article in the Times. They say 1929 there was a massive peaceful independence rally held in Lahore, okay, and 500,000 people turned up to it, okay, majority organized and majority attended by Sikhs, okay, and they said they put the Congress show into shame, okay, because it was just amazing, yeah. Gandhi and Nehru saw this. They saw how vocal the Sikhs were for independence. Okay, they wanted to gather that potential, but gather it under their wing, not let it grow into something independent from them. Okay, so they met them, and they said, "Look, let's have a unity notion of Sikh and Hindu unity." Okay, whereby Hindu Sikh bhai bhai. Yeah, this is what it was called, right? A unified India where the Sikh sentiments, okay, would be catered for, and these are social, economic, and religious. So they said, "Look, we will take care of you guys. Join us, we will take care of you guys," okay? And they all wanted a united India, but mostly with them in charge, okay? That was the aim. Especially by keeping the Sikhs within it. Here's some promises that Gandhi said, yeah? "Let God be the witness of the bond that binds me and the Congress to you," the Sikhs, okay? "Our Sikh friends have no reason to fear that we would betray them," yeah? For the moment it does so, Congress, yeah, Congress would not only seal its own doom, but that of the country as well. So if we betray the Sikhs, India will be doomed. Right? Why? Because the Sikhs are brave people. They know how to safeguard their rights. Okay? By the exercise of arms. He's talking about the Kirpan here. The Sikhs are Shastrtari. They know how to defend themselves, to defend their rights. So, and then he says, look, they would have perfect justification before God and man. That if we betrayed them, they could use those arms of theirs to get themselves freedom. This is what he's saying in 1931 to the Sikhs. Yeah. No constitution would ever be acceptable to the Congress which did not satisfy the Sikhs. Gandhi saying again, okay, in his collected works. You'll see what happens, yeah. Nehru, let's look at what he said, his promises. He said the brave Sikhs of Punjab are entitled to special consideration of all the people in India, yeah? Why? He said, I see nothing wrong in an area and a setup in the north. So a jaga and a situation which is federal. Remember, India is a federal government, yeah? It is Federal Republic of India. It is not Central Republic of India, federal. Like in America, every state has its own laws, different rules, everything else, yeah? He says, in the north, where the Sikhs can also experience the glow of freedom. This is as late as 1944, okay? Independence is going to come soon as the war is over. That was the plan. Everybody knew about this. Okay? So this is the promises that he's making. Now, as I said, each state was supposed to be semi-autonomous. Okay? The politicians in the center of India have actually stolen power from the way it was meant to be devolved to the states. Okay? The idea was that the currency and defense would be done by the federal government, okay, and every state would be semi-autonomous apart from that. Now, it's not chronological like I said to you, yeah? But the Sikhs were aware of what the Hindus were like and what India was like, yeah? They weren't dumb people that just accepted all these promises, okay? And I'm going to show you a letter now by one of our foremost intellectuals. He's a great spiritualist, one of my favorite writers, yeah? Puran Singh, okay? Here he is at the bottom. Can anybody guess who's sitting at the top? Who's sitting and whose feet is he sitting by? Anybody else? Just putting a bit of attention. It's by Veer Singh. By Veer Singh, one of our a foremost Sikh intellectual as well. Done a lot of Katha of Gurbani. He's written a steek of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Panj Granthi steek as well. Okay, very spiritual person, right? Also, Puran Singh is a very interesting guy. He was he was from a Sikh family, became a Hindu, then became a Buddhist, travelled to Japan, and then finally came back to Punjab, became a Singh, yeah, and writes his great books are 10 Masters, Spirit of the Sikhs, Spirit Born People. Great books to read, very very spiritual. Definitely read those books if you can. I normally recommend those as books to read them, and I'll definitely cover them in the when we talked about the Naam week 2, yeah. He writes a letter to Sir John Simon. Now this guy is sort of in touch with the Sikh psyche, the Sikh pulse, yeah, what the people are thinking. He writes a letter to the head of the Simon Commission, Sir John Simon. This commission was about constitutional reform of India in order to give it independence. Okay, what kind of constitution did India have? Okay, so this was a commission that was set up way before independence happened, looking into how to give India autonomy. And there's a couple of speeches up on the net about how even after independence, the idea was that India would be a British protectorate. Yeah, it would be like part of the Commonwealth, and it is part of the Commonwealth, but the Queen would be the head of the country, like Australia is, yeah, almost like its own country, but still nominally under the British Kingdom. That was the original idea. So they were looking into these kind of ideas. Would it be independent? Would it be a protectorate or whatever it was? One of the people in that was Clement Attlee in that commission, who became the future PM, okay, of England. So this is not some small time group, yeah. Here's what he writes. He says, look, there are Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, Christians, Parsis and Jains in India, but there are very few Indians. Yeah, means everybody thinks about their own group. They don't think nationally. Okay, because for centuries in India, formation of character has been associated not with the practice of broad-minded patriotism of India, but with certain racial prejudices and social superstitions. Is that true? Yeah. True, and Indians all think about which group they are, which caste they are, whatever the kind of, no one thinks as a community or a pant or a qawm. Even look at our qawm. Yeah? Now, self-government in India means government by the very few cunning and aggressive people, okay, who, once put in possession of the authority, would twist all letters of the law and constitutions to their individual wills and make them work on the communal or so-called religious bias. If you make India independent, the people that got hold of power would twist it and use it to just for their own interest. This is I think this is the 20s he was writing this letter. The whole letter is available online. It's just excerpts from the letter. It's quite a lengthy letter. Yeah. Then he says in other parts, he goes, hence, we think, he said to England, you already know how to run the government and utilize the country in your own ways for your own good. You're only going to use us, he says. Why? Whatever may be the case, our suspicion is that you did not and perhaps do not mean to help us to true freedom. He goes, you're going to cut and run. Why? Because any constitution coming in here essentially means the domination of one community over all the others. All the others must be kept in a permanent suspended state. Suspended of animation. Suspended animation. What he's saying is, don't rush into independence until people start thinking like Indians. Build a culture of India. Yeah, everybody's divided up. The British created this culture as well, part of it, divide and rule. Okay, so we need to build our Indian culture. And he said, do not, don't just rush and run away. But the British, after 45, were keen to leave India ASAP. Yeah, they were skint They couldn't afford to run the Indian Raj. The Indian British Raj wasn't giving them money, it was costing them. Right? They were a massive deficit, World War II's over, they got no money left. Okay? Whole country's in depression. So what is the scenario facing the Sikhs? Because this is the key thing here. Whenever we think about independence, most people, I'm sure, including me, have said, why did we not take our own country then? Looking back, we think, oh my gosh, what a mess up, we should have got our own country then. Okay? But what was facing the Sikhs at that time, it's important to understand as well. Okay? Now, let's start this thing up there, okay? Now, if our own country of Punjab, if the whole of Punjab at that time was given to us, Sikhs would have been 20% of the population. Sorry, not 10%, 20%. Okay? Rest would have been Hindu and Muslim. Who would ever want their own country with a 20% of the population? Yeah? Why is that a problem for us? Because the system to be adopted was going to be democracy. There wasn't going to be anything else. They weren't going to just give Sikhs their own rights. Now, I asked this last time, is democracy a Sikh system? Yeah? Is this percentage of population changed since Ranjit Singh's kingdom? Probably about the same, 20%, maybe even less when Ranjit Singh was in charge. Maybe we were even less, right? So, the Sikhs never had a problem ruling a kingdom where they were in the minority, as long as they were in charge. The problem was the system was going to be given to us by the British, and the system was democracy. Yeah? And that's what killed the Sikhs. Okay? Because we were faced with a nightmare scenario of democracy in a system where 20% of the votes are ours, and the rest could be Hindu or Muslim. Okay? Now Nehru, right, he wanted, again, in this, he only wanted to negotiate voting rights with the British about the constitution on the basis of Hindus or Muslims. He didn't want a third party in the negotiation. So he was planning to have, 50, for whatever percentage of seats for the Muslims in the Congress or the National House, like the MPs or whatever. So many MPs that are Muslim, so many MPs that are Hindu. He didn't want a third party in this as well. So they were having to fight the Indians to let us have MPs that were Sikhs, guaranteed MPs, so that's what they were. Obviously Sikhs wanted higher than this 20% proportional representation, okay? But they weren't prepared to even give us one that was a Sikh seat, let alone having like 50-60% of the seats for the Sikhs. So we had a problem. If we're one big country of India, okay, then we're a minority in a very large Punjab. In a federal Punjab, we're still a minority, okay? And we're likely to be Muslim dominated, because there were more Muslims in Punjab than there were Hindus, okay? Obviously you can see Pakistan, Punjab is massive. It's about half the size of what Haryana, Himachal Pradesh and Punjab is now in India. So that was all Muslim people, right? So it's quite a lot of Muslim Punjabis. If we get our own country, then we have this problem where we're dominated by the Muslims, okay? So I got that wrong. If we had our own country, not one country, own country, well then we are a minority in our own country, okay? And it's majority Muslim ruled. So at some point they could rule, that we want to join with Pakistan. Then we lose our country, okay? So Tara Singh now was a big opposer of a partition. He wanted to keep India as a part. He was quite an Indian patriot. He was from a Hindu background, okay? So there might have been a bias in there. I'm not going to deny that, okay? I'm not standing up and speaking for the guy. I don't know what he was like personally. However, he was part of the SGPC. He was not a Gadari Baba. He was not a revolutionary in that sense. He'd been a part of the group that was trying to work with the British to get us certain rights. So he was off the ilk that we should work with other people rather than strike out. Now for me, basically he did get convinced, to choose partition. And that was because of the promises that were made to him by Nehru and Gandhi. Remember, this is 1944. Then Nehru was saying, I see nothing wrong with an area in the north where you can have your glow of freedom. Okay? And the other side was that we end up with our own country with a Muslim group. Or we join Pakistan. Jinnah was saying, come and join us. Have your own country in Pakistan. And people were like, well, I don't know if we can trust him. Yeah? So, we didn't get to choose our own country. For me, I don't know if I've covered this in the point, so I'll cover it now. I think in a way we'd lost our independent thinking by that time. Yeah, we lost the idea of Raj Kariya Khalsa. Yeah, lost the idea of saying, well, actually, no, we don't want democracy. Yeah, I don't think it's right for our country. We choose our own system. Yeah, Sikhs had to choose their system. And it'd been so long since Ranjit Singh's Raj. It's been over 100 years since the Raj was there. 1939 when our Raj was gone. And the British had kind of brought all this politics and all this kind of, committee system into the Sikh community. It was hard for us to think outside that framework and start going back to the Panj Pyare system, the kind of independent Sikh thinking. Yeah. So our mentality was kind of gone, and they were a little bit unsure about themselves. Yeah. They weren't like, you know what, we can run our own country, that's fine. Yeah, no matter what happens, we'll take it anyway. Sawa lakh se ek lana. We kind of lost that mentality. And people were worried. And they didn't have that much faith in their Guru, that their Guru Sahib would protect them when they had their own country. And in a way, they chose the safe option. Yeah? The safe option at that time looked like, let's just join India. Okay? He was very disappointed with what happened afterwards, by the way. Master Singh, bitterly disappointed with what happened. And he was very much a part of the Punjabi Suba Movement. Okay, that comes after. Okay, what happened to independence? June 1947, independence is looming. The deadline was set already. That it's going to be in June 1947. Okay, it was like a deadline was looming because it was going to be August. It was booked already. That in August we were going to get independence. Okay, so basically, the system isn't set up yet, but they've set the date. It's like, we're going to book the marriage, right? But don't know who's going to get married to who. How's it going to be? Do you know what I mean? Crazy system, right? Massacres start happening, okay? Because the Muslim League say, you know what, we can't trust Jinnah. We can't trust Nehru, we can't trust Gandhi. Gandhi's dead by that time, I think, already. We can't trust, maybe he's not. No, he dies after independence, yeah? So Gandhi's not dead, but Nehru is dead. And they don't want to work with these guys, they don't trust them. So they start pushing for their own country, and massacres are part of that. Have you heard of the Radcliffe line? If you haven't, look on the picture, it's the red bit. Yeah. This is the line that divides India and Pakistan. It was drawn up by a guy called Sir John, I think his name is Sir John Radcliffe, I'm not sure, but Radcliffe was his surname anyway. He knows that August 15 is going to be independence. He arrives on the 8th of July to India, given 5 weeks to draw a line between India and Pakistan. You might think in that time he's very busy, yeah? Running around trying to work out who should go to what, and consulting with everybody. But oh no, he doesn't. Yeah? He only basically has no specialized knowledge. He's a bureaucrat brought in from England. Okay? Very hasty and very indifferent. He hated being in India, hated the climate. It was July in India.
Why was he chosen to make this decision?
He's a career politician, probably had a knighthood, respected person. Just get him to do it. You can blame him for it later on. He was not an Orientalist, if that's what you're thinking about. He wasn't picked for his intimate knowledge of Indian culture. If anybody, they should have picked somebody who was like the Viscount or somebody else who was been in India for many years, but they didn't. They picked somebody independent because they didn't want to get the details to leak out as well. Yeah, no details of the line were leaked out. No one knew where it was going to be until the very last moment. This was a key part of the plan, to spring it on people. You are now in Pakistan. You are now in India. Yeah? Why would they do that? Why not tell people weeks and months in advance so they could start moving across? No. He was warned, yeah, that this publishing last minute, not going out, he didn't actually go out much and talk to anybody. He wanted to stay in his room, pore over maps, study documents, and draw the line from within his maps, within his room, yeah? He didn't want to go outside. He has AC on, pakhewale over there, giving him a fan. Didn't want to go outside that much, yeah? Hated the food, hated the climate.
He was actually a civil servant that was an expert in maps.
Okay, so he's just a map expert. Okay, not a cultural expert, a map expert. Someone works for National Geographic, not National Geographic, who's the other people that make those maps? OS Survey, the kind of Ordnance Survey. So, Puran Singh said this is going to be unavoidable, that killings will happen because of what you're doing. He was warned, didn't care much. Okay? Funny thing is, not that funny to be honest, Radcliffe, yeah, destroyed all of his papers about how he worked out where the line was going to go. Now, you don't do that stuff unless you got something to hide. Yeah? Even the 30 years later we found out that Britain had been part of it, but they didn't destroy the papers. Yeah? But he did. And Mountbatten put his hands up and said, nothing to do with me. This guy came from England, did the line, I don't even know what's going to happen. Yeah? And this line was drawn in 5 weeks. They divided India. Okay? And because of this line, a lot of people died. 1 million people died. Yeah. August 1947, okay, independence. There is a mass movement of people. All the Muslims in the local areas want to go to Pakistan. Yeah. All the Hindus and Sikhs in Pakistan want to get across to India. Okay. And to hasten that cause and not to make them stay there, right? There's killings happening on both sides. You have to see Jao. Don't stay here. Kill. 40% of all the Sikhs that were alive at that time became refugees. It impacted the Sikhs the worst, this line. After all the loyalty, they might say, oh, we've done so much for the British government, why did you go and plan, 1984? Well, look what happened in 47, only 60 years ago. 65 years ago, yeah? After all the loyalty of the British soldiers in First World War, Second World War, they drew a line right through our homeland, knowing that it would kill the Sikhs the most. Yeah? 40% of our Panth became refugees. Massacres, over 1 million died. Okay? There were stories of murder, rape, suicide, disease. Okay? Loads of people died. Okay? It was just sick. There was rumours from all sides, they've killed these many people, we need to kill some people back. There was retaliation murders. A train would come over to Pakistan full of dead Muslims, so then they would send back a train full of dead Hindus and Sikhs. Then they would send back one back saying, you stop this or we will send one back. It was horrific. You imagine a train rolling up with like 500, 6 dead people on it, sent in as a message to don't do this again. Sikh parents, you've heard about Meera Syal, she went back to India, Punjab, and she was talking to her grandfather. Yeah, people that were in villages that were now majoritarily Sikh villages that were now in Pakistan, they faced the fact that people were coming in to take the land because the land belonged to the Sikhs, but they're going to have to boot it out. So what was going on? There was a land grab as well. Yeah, and people wanted to take the land because if you got rights, if you've got the land, it's yours. Then when the country's formed, you are now a rich man, right? So people were coming over to grab land, grab what they could. It was like a mad rush, like the Wild Wild West. You've seen the movies, yeah? It was like the Wild West back then, and there was no law and order because the governments have just been dissolved. Who is the police? Yeah, Sikh fathers. I mean, the the sarpanch of the villages, famous many stories of them lining up all the girls, all the women, and just each one was being beheaded because they didn't want them to get raped. Yeah. And there's a play that came in, I think it was early this year, or last year, sorry, in Central London. They did a play about that. Yeah, so it was rough time. There's a story. There's a famous story of I heard in Sikhi camp was one of the Gurdwara, majority Sikh Gurdwara. They all left the Gurdwara. They all left the Pind. But when they were out of the Pind, travelling with whatever they could carry, they realised that Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj was still back in the village. And the Mughals were coming to invade, they were obviously going to burn everything down. So this one Nihang Singh goes, I'll go back and get Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Yeah? So he goes back and the town is now under attack. And this guy gets into the Gurdwara somehow, fights his way in, gets upstairs, and then does Sukhasan and got married from Sukhasan. And he comes outside and he realises that the people are at the bottom of the building and there's no way out from the front. So then he ties up all the chadra, yeah? He takes all his parne and stuff and ties Maharaj to his head. Yeah? He just, with the kapde and stuff, ties Maharaj to his head, and then puts kapde down, climbs out of the window with the chadra to get to the bottom, and he manages to get out of that village alive. Guru Granth Sahib Ji on his head. And the story goes that when he comes back to the people, he's escaped, and they all praising him for his bravery. And they go, "You saved Guru Granth Sahib Ji." He goes, "You're wrong. Guru Granth Sahib Ji saved me, because I could not have got at that place alive had it not been for Maharaj saving me." Yeah. So there's a lot of, one thing that's interesting to note from our history is that Maler Kotla is a place in Punjab, majoritarily Muslim place, and not one single Muslim was harmed there. Okay, everywhere else there was massacres. Yeah, on both sides. I'm not denying it, but not in Maler Kotla, because Maler Kotla is where Sher Muhammad Khan was from. Sher Muhammad Khan was that guy who was offered the chance to kill the Chote Sahibzade, yeah, when they were in Sarhand, and he refused it. He goes, "What kind of justice is this?" His brother was killed by Guru Gobind Singh Ji in battle, and he was given a chance to kill Chote Sahibzade, and he refused to. And he called out Wazir Khan. He said, "This is wrong what you're doing, to take the lives of children." Okay, And because that Guru Gobind Singh always promised that he will be safe and he'll be protected, and he was protected, yeah. Sikhs remembered that. So, interesting history. Now, you know, every single family here, I'm sure, has got stories about 47. Yeah, maybe your grandparents, if they're still alive, will tell you. Okay, I've got grandparents that were alive. My family was in Pakistan. They had to move across to the UK, to Punjab. They all lost out all their land, everything they had. Yeah, but also bear in mind that if you were traveling and you got ill, that's it. There's no ilaj then. What were they going to do? Take you to hospital where? Which hospital? Who do you trust? Yeah. So loads of people died that way as well. Yeah. A lot of children lost their mothers. A lot of lot of bad stuff happened during that time. 1 million people dying is nothing small. There's 10% of the people that moved died basically. There was some land compensation given in India, but it wasn't big. Okay. So what happens? Punjab gets split. Now Lahore was always our political capital. I want you to bear this in mind. Yeah, Maharaja Ranjit Singh's kingdom was run from Lahore. Lahore is only 19 kilometers from Amritsar. So these two cities were like our twin. You know, the spiritual center of the Sikhs and the political capital of the Sikh kingdom was in Lahore. So Lahore was full of Sikhs. Yeah, and it goes to Pakistan. Also, if you weren't aware at that time, Bangladesh was not a separate country at that time. It was created as East Pakistan and West Pakistan. East Pakistan was Bangladesh and West Pakistan. So imagine this, yeah? India in the middle, Pakistan on that side, Pakistan on this side. Crazy system, isn't it? Okay. The princely states of India had to choose who they're going to go to. Okay. When I see princely states, there were still states within India which were ruled by princes that were under the British administration, and the leaders got to choose. Now, one of the problems was that in Kashmir, the Dogras were the guys that were put in charge. Yeah, the Dogras were the guys that sold out the Sikh kingdom. We talked about this last week. Yeah, Sham Singh Dogra, and those guys had sold down. They were generals in Raja Ranjit Singh's in army. They betrayed Raja Ranjit Singh's army, sold out to the British, and in exchange they were given Kashmir. Now Kashmir was mostly Muslim, but the rulers were Hindu. Yeah, these guys they're Brahmins. So they basically decided, you know what, we're going to go to India, not to Pakistan. Majoritarily Muslim area now becomes part of India. Okay, because people were given the chance, the princes were given a chance to choose, but we were not. The Sikh kingdom was not given a chance. They took it over, but then they made it into their own province. They did what they wanted. The question here is, had India ever really been a country? Who made India? You know, India was made by the British. It always been princely states. Yeah, it never been a country. So the problem is, it's made into a country, and everybody's of diverse interests. Puran Singh's letter you just read out, they've all got their own little communal groups, and then they're stuffed into one country. Yeah, and the question is, who's in charge? That's the only question on anybody's lips. Who will run the country? Because they know whoever's in charge, he's got the soti, he's going to make you go in it. Now Sikhs talked to Nehru about their rights, given what he'd promised in 1944. This is what he says. He goes, the time has changed now. If you wanted to live freely, then why don't you demand for a separate country from the British? This is 3 years after what he's promised. Nehru now, again, the Sikhs are a lawless people and a menace to the law-abiding Hindus. Not just like all Sikhs, yeah? The government should take strict measures against them. Puran Singh's words coming to truth, isn't it, basically? And this is what he says in 61. Okay? Kya main takht dushman ke haath mein de दूं? Should I give power to my enemies then? Because the Sikhs at that time are asking for the Punjabi Suba, their own. And he goes, should I give it to them then? Give power to the Sikhs. And he sees them as dushman. Yeah? So as far as he's concerned, you know, India should be run by the Hindus. It's Hindustan. Yeah? And Sikhs need to understand what their role is within India. That they're the slaves, not the masters. Let's have, guys, we haven't got long because we've got to get from here all the way to 47. But we have a little break here for just a bit of water and stuff. So please, no more than 5-10 minutes, okay? 5 minutes, yeah, please. Because we're not going to get through, there's going to be no Q&A afterwards otherwise.